The electronic synthesizer is a space-age music maker. But this music was composed in another era by an Australian musician, the late Percy Grainger. In the horse and buggy days of early this century, Grainger was composing works that wouldn't be heard until the 70s. He never heard them. Grainger died in 1961, before the synthesizer was invented, but it was the machine he dreamed of, a machine that allowed the composer to speak directly to the audience, free of the limitations of the human hand. Grainger called it free music. Grainger is best known for such works as Country Gardens and Shepherd's Hay, but a little-known talent of this extraordinary Australian is reflected in his strange free music machines. The machines were sent to the Grainger Museum at Melbourne University from his American home after he died. They remained unassembled until recently, when Mr. Burnett Cross of New York made a special visit to assemble them. Burnett Cross, a physicist and professional drummer, worked with Grainger to make these machines between 1945 and 1961. A chance meeting in New York brought the two together. Cross wanted a job, and Grainger wanted a musically inclined scientist, so a pact was made. Grainger's methodical habits are seen in the detailed labelling of the parts of the experimental music machines that once cluttered his American home. In his efforts to produce free music, Grainger devised machines that could be regarded as crude forerunners of the synthesizer. Grainger was trying to create music that was not limited by time and pitch intervals. Burnett Cross describes an early model.
Percy called it a reed box tone tool. The main part of this machine is a reed box down in here, which is a kind of giant mouth organ. It has harmonium reeds mounted in it, just the way they're mounted in a mouth organ. Percy thought that if we had the reeds very close together, we might be able to get something that sounded like a glide. And that's what he was interested in, a gliding sound. From this machine, Percy learned that his idea of gliding chords that he had heard in his mind was in fact valid, musically worthwhile.
And this is how it sounds with Percy Grainger's identification.
First gliding chords on reed box tone tool, September the 30th, 1951.
This sound was originally recorded on acetate discs by Burnett Cross, who shows with his hand how the perforations relate to the sound made by the tone tool. Copies of the tape are in the Grainger Museum.
He was a marvelous man to work with. Part of the fun, of course, was this research thing that we were engaged on, because that's what it really was, research into free music, and that appealed to me. But another part of it was being with Percy, talking with him. It was enormous fun. We had conversations which were just a delight, just an intellectual feast. And then, of course, another part of the pleasure of working with him was that he played the piano so marvelously, and he frequently played the piano.
Burnett, exactly how does this machine make music?
This is an electronic oscillator, and it gives out a musical sound by way of a loudspeaker. When you move this arm like this, the pitch of the musical sound changes, something like this. Now, this little rider here can move the arm to change the pitch of the oscillator, and the little rider is lifted up and lowered by this paper graph passing through the machine. Percy cut the profile of the paper graph after he drew it with a pencil and a ruler. After he drew it according to measurements that I gave him of, say, something like 1/2 inch to the half tone or whatever. Now, that doesn't mean that Percy was thinking in half tones, of course. Those were just convenient points. He was thinking in intervalless sounds.
What was Grainger actually trying to achieve then with these machines?
He was trying to actually hear in the room the music that he had heard in his mind for many years, in fact for almost his whole life. Now, you might wonder, why would he need machines to hear this music? Well, the kind of music that Percy was composing, his free music, was too difficult for people to play. People couldn't play it. And Percy saw, therefore, that the thing to do was to make machines that could play his music as he had composed it.
Did you, at the time, appreciate the fact that you were involved in something historic in the development of music?
Yes, I had a very definite feeling that what we were doing was something not only historic, but something important to the development of music. Because when Percy said things like free music being the only kind of music that was appropriate to a scientific age, that music ought to be able to move in curves freely through space, and not just by little steps or in little mosaic-like patterns. That seemed to me to make great sense. So I was convinced that what Percy was talking about and what we were doing was something really important besides being great fun.
Leading synthesizer companies in America declined to attempt programming Grainger's free music compositions. They all said the music was interesting, but too difficult, because Grainger composed it in graphs rather than conventional music notation. Les Craythorne, the programmer at the Melbourne University Conservatorium of Music, was the first to attempt programming a Grainger free music composition on an electronic synthesizer. He took 14 hours over several days to produce the historic tape. The tape runs for 1 3/4 minutes and was played for the first time in public at this year's Percy Grainger Memorial Lecture in Melbourne.
Now we have something very special, so special that I hardly know how to introduce it to you. Something that Percy waited to hear all his life and never heard. The realization of his free music composition number 1.
And what did Mr. Cross think of it after all those years of waiting?
I'm overwhelmed. I thought, thinking about it before it happened, it would be something like a trip to the moon. But it isn't like a trip to the moon for me. The moon is a rather familiar object to me. This was like landing on a new planet, one that I've never heard of, completely unknown. The landscape is all different from anything I've ever seen before or walked on. I don't know what it means, but it's there, and it has to be explored somehow.
In 1938, Grainger wrote that he first heard free music in his head when, as a boy in Melbourne, he watched the sea at Brighton and Albert Park. He could never see why, in a scientific age, music shouldn't be as free and as infinitely variable as the waves.